Kyran O'Neill,
Michael, brother.
what would this audience need to know about you that would frame the conversation we're about to have?
Good question. Well, I'm a mental performance consultant, so I mainly work with business owners, executives, and high performers around three things: helping them think, feel, and perform on another level, helping them simplify what it is that they're doing so they can achieve their targets in less time with less stress. That's really what I do. My background, so 10 years boxing, managed to make the national team, started working with a sports psychologist in that field. Then spent 6 years of international software sales. Software sales is just psychology. It's exactly the same thing. I was so stumped when I did my therapy training that so many of the questions and the conversations were not identical, but 70% the same. Retrained as a therapist, cognitive therapist, and NLP practitioner. Started coaching people for free, and then everybody started paying me. And then I started speaking, and then I grew Total Mental Performance. So we've had 500 one-to-one clients for our programs in the last coming up to 5 years now. And now I'm actually moving into education. So coach education. A lot of clients have been asking us, how do I become a mental performance coach? And I'm working on the first cohort of the total mental performance certification. So that is the whistle stop tour that would frame this conversation.
Amazing. Talk to me about thinking and feeling. I've been reading, I know you'll be familiar with Alan Watkins,
Uh-huh.
Coherence, and I don't want to do this any injustice, but he said that if thinking and feeling were to have an arm wrestle, feeling would win every time. Would you agree?
Mhm. I think thinking pokes feeling in the eye and then creates a response from feeling. Uh, yeah. I mean, I think I think it's a wrestle. I think it's two black belts wrestling with each other, and I don't know if it wins every time. Here's an example. A lot of people try and solve their problems with more thinking. So they think more and they think more and they think more and they think more. And next thing you know, they have so many thoughts they don't know what to do. On the flip side, if you're angry, uh, strong emotions make us stupid. They cut down our time frames, they cut down our options, and that's not helpful. So I guess the question, if they had an arm wrestle, who would win? Which one is stronger? I think it depends. But that's my problem as a deep thinker is I can see the argument for both, even in business, politics, global war, economies, Bitcoin, all of it. I can see the upside and the downside of both. So that's the answer you got. Don't know if it answers the question. I think it's a tighter wrestle than one thinks.
More of a dance than an arm wrestle.
Yeah, yeah,
Talk to
yeah.
me about your boxing background because I do want to go into this a little bit because you and I both know that there is quite a bit of psychology involved in, I suppose, every form of martial arts, but you boxed from a young age until what age did you? It was only amateur, wasn't it? You never turned
Um,
professional.
Only amateur, yeah. I never went into the pros. I was never interested in fighting for money. I don't know
Yeah,
why. It never
same.
computed. It was never like, this is how I make my living. I always just loved the art of boxing. So yeah, I boxed from 12 up until 22. Um, my dad used to box. And I asked him, Dad, can I box? And he said, no, it's too dangerous. And you never tell a boy, no, it's too dangerous. Don't do that, right? So I was like, I'm gonna prove you wrong. Like, watch. And he was like, yeah, yeah, all right. And I think he thought he'll quit, and I never did. But boxing for me, I don't know what your experience was, but having a coach stand in front of you and say, hit those pads and focus, right? And you'll not only get out of your house, but you'll get out of this town. And if you do really well, you'll go all over the country. And if you do really well, you can get on a plane, you can fly abroad. Wouldn't that be amazing? Yeah, that would be. Yeah. And they gave me that encouragement, you can do this. So for me, boxing was an escape. I wasn't great at school, undiagnosed ADHD, really small house, and I always felt trapped. And when I went to boxing, that's where I felt free. So it became a real passion, and then it became an addiction. Um, and then I had a period of time, it was right when I was about 20. 19, 20. I had a couple of years of software sales experience and I'd done pretty well. And I'd made enough money to take the leap and go, I'm going to go do this full time. And this is, I want to go to the Olympics. I want to give this a go. So I went all in. I went all in and I managed to get on the England men's team on the talent program. I was 56 kilos. I'm 58, 56 kilos. I'm 5'8", and I couldn't maintain that weight. I was a giant at the weight class, but I just couldn't maintain it. Eating disorder, anxiety, depression, wanting to take my own life. It didn't work out well, but what I did learn was boxing and business hold hands. You know, like I think of sales like offense. But if your offense is so good, but you got terrible defense, which is expenditure, you're gonna have a really tough time. Your business model is your footwork. If you've got no footwork, you can't, you haven't really got a leg to stand on. And then you've got, you know, just general resilience, adaptability. There is so many parallels. And I think that failing in public, because I won a lot, but I also I got beat up a couple of times publicly. I never went to the Olympics like I told everyone I would. Didn't even make Team GB like I told everyone I would, you know. So failing in public set me up. The sport, Hazel Gale, so she was a former kickboxing world champion, world-class therapist and performance coach. She was really like the lady that instilled a series of principles that served me so well in boxing and then in software sales and then me as a coach and as a mentor. And so I think fighting is just another metaphor for business and for life. You know this, and it's all the skills that you
Yeah,
pick up. You know, it just sets you up.
absolutely. What sort of traits do you feel maybe has changed inside you that would have helped you deal better with eating disorders, anxiety, those negative emotions that and I think, you know, you and I are quite similar in that sense because they were things that I definitely experienced. I was a very emotional fighter. Like one of my good friends, and a lot of our listeners will know who it is, like Sean McComb. And you might know Sean.
I know
He,
Sean. I've met Sean.
yeah, so Sean was absolutely robbed of a world title there recently, but
Yeah,
he he gets out of a world title fight of that magnitude, laughs it off, and goes for a beer. I
yeah.
mean, I would be crying into my porridge for at least 6 months
Um,
after that, but he just he has a way of dealing with things and it's through humor. I never really developed that until I was a little bit older. And
yeah.
so I'm curious as to like what sort of traits do you feel like would have helped you navigate those sort of negative emotions? Well, I'm going to say negative. I suppose they exist for a certain reason, but what would have helped you navigate them better?
You know, I think if I just worked smarter and not harder, I think that would have saved a lot of my strife and my struggle. You know, if I had a bit more confidence to move up to 60 kg and backed and believed in myself to do that, I think if, and I did have a coach, an international coach, push me on to a level, but also put a limiting belief in me, which was you're only good because you're light. He said that out of spite. And I really believed him. And so I stayed. I created this belief, which is if I go up in weight, I might not be as good. I didn't give myself the opportunity to find out. I stayed there. Whereas now, if I look at how I work very intentionally. So I hunt like a lion versus grazing like a cow. So I get in, I train. My equivalent of training is working, right? So I get in, I work, and I just hang out. Whereas when I was training, I was training 3 times a day as an amateur, which is just like, it's just not necessary. I was eating 14, 1,500 calories to try and stay at that weight. I was so anxious. I was so nervous. I was always on all of the time. Like, even when I wasn't training, I was watching fights and studying and listening and learning. And there was such an intensity. I could never have reached my full potential because I was operating at 30, 40%. And that's the same parallel that I teach most of my entrepreneurial clients, which is you're so burnt out and overwhelmed, stressed, and ineffective, you can't commercially punch as hard or as fast or as solid as you could if you just pulled back a little bit and focused on the right things. With age, I would say that's the biggest thing for me. What would you say for you was the biggest thing you look back and you're like, you know what, man, if I had this, that probably would have helped me.
Emotional resilience. I think I've developed quite a stoic view on how life happens in general. And yeah, like I remember probably one of the last times I actually remember physically shedding tears was losing a fight. You remember the old countback system?
Yeah.
So
Oh,
uh,
I went back to
yeah,
countback.
it
Yeah.
was it was actually a tie on countback as well. So it was like 24-24. And then I remember losing the fight and my father was there, my uncles were there. And now I kind of look at it with quite a stoic view. So, anything like that, because athletics mean and combat sports, they're a big part of my life. And so, having that emotional attachment to it almost just comes, I don't know, just intuitively. And so, yeah, I suppose to summarize, the trait that I would have brought in was just a level of sort of stoicism, emotional resilience. And I'm told that there can be a negative side to that because sometimes it can seem as if I don't really process emotions much, where I'm just like, hey, listen, it can seem like quite nihilistic.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I kind of just say to myself now, this too shall pass, and um, it is what it is. And
Yeah.
I looking back, I definitely would have. I always say to people, champions have short memories, and so I would have really held on tightly to losses, especially losses that were of that nature. Would have been different had I just got annihilated. It would have been like, hey, it is what it is. But when
Yeah.
it was that nature, then I would have held on tightly to it and asked myself, what if? But there's always a what if, isn't there? It's just like a, hey, it
Yeah.
is what it is, this too shall pass, move on to the next one. So yeah, I think that would have definitely been it.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, the Stoics, when you think about the Stoics and the way they used to look at life, people think they're a bit boring and they used to think
Yep.
they were quite emotionally blunted. But the beauty of the Stoics, there's a statue. It's Boxer at Rest. Have you seen it?
Haven't seen this, no.
It's
I'm
the
gonna
most
look it up.
beautiful. It's the most beautiful sculpture in the world. I will fly to Italy to go and see it. Amazing. And it's basically a boxer. He's sat down and he's looking. If you're listening to this, I'm looking up to over my left shoulder up at the camera, and he's looking up like that, and you can see like the cuts and the bruises and the dark. Like they've carved out the eyes, so the eyes are just a dark shadow. And it's a boxer that's just had his ass kicked, and he's in pain. And when you think about those Stoics, they create a level of detachment which is okay. I think it's good for the dark times and the difficult times. I think if you go too stoic, you can learn to lose the color of life a little bit. So I think for me, I like to try and be stoic in the setbacks, but then almost hedonistic in the upside, which is when good things happen, like stopping and celebrating, going, you know what, this is amazing because
Mm.
there's so little, real big moments that we actually love and accept, and we go, yeah, this is great. So easy for us to just go next, but actually learning to go, you know what, I pulled that off, and I'm really proud of that, and I'm really happy with that. When you go too stoic, it's like it's just another day at the office, and I that's the bit with the stoics where I always think, I know indifference is helpful. But does it take the shine and the color out of the beautiful
Yeah,
parts of life, you know?
it's helpful until it's not.
Yeah.
What moments in your life have you found lately where you've sat and for me, it's like, the term you won't if you can't enjoy a coffee, you won't enjoy a yacht.
Uh-huh.
There's certain parts of my day where getting up in the morning, opening up my laptop, writing an email while sipping a coffee gives me no greater joy in the world to do that. Walking
Um,
my dog at the end of the evening when the sun goes down, which is quite an amazing view from where I live on the Black Mountain in Belfast. What moments in your life in business have you found of late where you've sat and just absorbed it all and thought, you know what, this is it.
I was journaling on this the other day. So I'm working with a guy. great business guy, but he's a cage fighter, but he can't quite let it go. And he's got some serious health issues that's keeping him out from fighting, and he can't let the dream go. And he asked me, but sparring and fighting, there's no other feeling. And I said, that's not true. And he goes, don't tell me you found one. And I said, I have. He goes, where is that? And I said, doing what we're doing right now, one-to-one coaching. That's my sparring. That's my fight. I love it. I adore it. So one of my friends said, I think you're talking shit when I said I said this online, which is honestly, like when it comes to one-to-one coaching, if money didn't exist, I'll do it every day, and I get such a joy. And I experience. I coach probably 6 to 8 one-to-ones a week. I could make more money if I didn't do that and focus on scaling the business, but that's just not a trade-off I'm willing to trade off, you know? If it was like, oh, you can do everything else other than sparring, like you just wouldn't take that out of your plan. It's the same level of joy. So I get that 2 to 3 days a week of wow, wow. Um, Funny you mentioned a dog. Just playing with a dog, wrestling with a
Hmm.
dog, having fun, enjoying the dog, like all of that. Easy, like that's another thing. Watching fights, like watching boxing, like watching really good boxing. Coffee as well. Like I will happily travel to find a nice spot to have a good coffee, and I'll happily spend a bit of money on a coffee. That's like you charge how much for coffee? Because I'm not paying for the coffee, I'm paying for the moment. You know,
Yeah.
that's the thing that you're paying for is you got your journal, you got your pen, you got your coffee, and you got a beautiful environment. You know, so I think hyper fixating on the little things, not insofar as I've got to get this done. But like, yeah, I'm gonna have a nice coffee today. I'm gonna go and do that. Or I'm gonna spend the afternoon and just spitball ideas with a friend and just see what that's about. You know, those are the little moments that, I always think, when you hear people say I'd rather cry in a Ferrari, I'm like, I couldn't care less where I cry. You know what I mean? Like, what's the Ferrari got to do with it? That's such an external point. So I'd say those are my little moments of, ah, man. Yeah, serenity and peace.
Nice. I have a question. So, and again, this is just out of my own personal curiosity. You run a company called Total Mental Performance. And
Uh-huh.
so I know you work with quite a number of males. I don't know what sort of numbers it is in terms of your female clientele or anything like that. But a few weeks ago, I was at a men's mental health event and I was one of the speakers. And so
Oh, amazing.
one of the I mean, my thing being there was obviously I was talking about sport, fitness, nutrition, and things like that. It was just generally in my lane. But I heard some of the guys, and they were talking about alternative medicines, and they were talking about things like retreats and I suppose ayahuasca, and just different things like this, and even sort of, there was two of the guys there and they were talking about, oh yeah, I'll sit down and I'll have a little cry every other week. And I can even hear myself now in the tone in which I'm saying this in, just being so resistant to it, right? Uh, I'm not quite sure why, and I haven't really dug that deep into it. However, whenever I sat and I listened to those guys, and I actually said this from stage, I was like, guys, I feel so misplaced in here, and I have done with this stuff for quite a while because while you guys were talking about sitting down and having a cry every 2 weeks, there's no part of my fiber that wants to do that. And there was times where I would sit and I would question, what the fuck is wrong with me? You know?
Mm.
Something wrong with me. I mean, it seems so apparent these days. Could be an age thing where, there's a lot of people that are, I would say more so. I don't know, men's mental health is a huge thing now, but it just seems to me like there's more people more in touch with that stuff. And I don't
Mhm.
know if I'm the outlier. Do you see some of uh both sides of this in some of your clients and in yourself?
Yeah. Well, everyone's got different levels of sensitivity, right? And it sounds like you are at one end of the spectrum, overly emotional, very sensitive, very, especially with the boxing and the fighting, right?
Yeah.
And that. became too much. Then you got the opposite end of the spectrum, which is dissociation, which is I don't feel anything. And sometimes what can happen is we're in the sensitivity for so long, we then create an emotional numbness and a disassociation, which is just, I'm so tired of that. I don't want to even feel that anymore. So then what happens is we start to go into ourselves. We find it hard to access that inner part of that sensitivity. Now, there are some people that they need to cry a lot. There's clearly a lot going on. And when it comes to mental health, there are some key things to think about. Neurology, ADHD, bipolar, autism, the way in which the brain is wired, there will be some things in there that create higher levels of sensitivity. Trauma. Some people have had traumatic upbringings, which can create a higher level of sensitivity, but at the same time can create a high level of disassociation and emotional numbness to, I can't even deal with that anymore. I think benchmarking yourself against others is always a bad idea when it comes to things like the mind, the way in which you think and feel. My philosophy is very much understanding your internal algorithm and how yours works, and then getting the most out of that. And the most of getting out of that might be flow, might be calm. Now, if there's an emotional blocker that's inside you, that's like, I just don't want to go in there, don't feel called to it, I just don't feel there, that's okay. You know, if you feel content, you feel at peace, and you feel good, I don't think it's worth ripping up everything, just for the sake of it. A lot of therapists like to do that. Yeah, but you've got to address this. You've got to address that. The therapist inside me says, yeah, I can see value in that. But then the mental performance coach inside me says that, well, hang on, if this guy's operating and he's feeling good and everything's working, why shake the unconscious snow globe? You know? So that's where I differ a little bit to the therapists now, uh, insofar as my view on that. I think men in general are getting more in touch with their emotions. I think there is, I might sound a bit harsh here, but there is like men didn't take their feelings seriously enough for a long time. Now I think they're starting to take it too seriously.
Yeah.
And we're, especially in the younger generations, which is, yeah, but that's making me anxious. Yeah, well, guess what? All your ancestors felt anxious. It was the anxious ones that survived, right? And anxiousness and fear are things that are built in us to keep us alive. It's not a bad thing. It's just how you handle those thoughts and those feelings. So I'm not really a big fan of the big men's groups where, men come together and they start screaming and shouting in the woods and start crying and start doing all that stuff. I'm not saying that there isn't value in that. Just for
Mhm.
me and like the breath work stuff and all of that, I don't think that's necessary for you to make the breakthroughs that you need. I think crying isn't a prerequisite. That can help, particularly if you've been storing a lot of stuff. But again, I don't think it's a prerequisite to breaking through to that next league and that next level. The ayahuasca, I flew to Peru and did an ayahuasca ceremony before, and it definitely changed my life. It brought up a lot, both metaphorically and physically, uh, and yeah, it opened my eyes. I wasn't in a rush to go back. I preferred to let that settle, and I think off the back of that, I really matured a lot. I've really matured a lot. I've become a lot less sensitive. I've become a lot more calm. I've become a lot more focused. So it was valuable. But there's a lot of places out there, fake shamans or uh, retreats and male retreats that really they're just overpriced and expensive just because people can charge for that. The place I went to, they had a shaman, an Andean priest, a psychiatrist, a doctor, and a medical team on board. So it wasn't just some random Western dude that's like, come with me, my friend. And it also wasn't a random shaman in the woods. It was a facility that had a process and a medical team on board to, facilitate these journeys in a really powerful and effective way. So I don't know if that directly answers the question, but I hope that gives you some context on how I'm looking at that thing.
Yeah, that was perfect, mate. And it's good to speak to someone who has that level of experience. I think I have seen occasions where the mind, in particular, my best friend, his younger sister, she was like a little sister to me, and through whatever sort of chemical reaction has happened, she's now got schizophrenia, and uh it's scary to see someone who was so clear for so long be in such a position. And I think there's a lot of fear around that with some of those things. But all of that stuff aside, uh, yeah, I know quite a few men specifically who have gone to quite a few of those things, and again, I don't know what the block is, but I'm just like, yeah, I'm not feeling it. Actually at the same event, someone had said or had asked, what would my general advice be in terms of movement, fitness, whatever, and I said, look, learn how to fight.
Yeah.
It's better, it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war, and it'll just fill you with so much confidence and certainty. Your ego will get absolutely annihilated. I've left the boxing world, and I'm now in the jiu-jitsu world.
More
So
longevity in that sport, without a
more
doubt.
longevity there, mate.
Yeah.
No head trauma. It's just amazing. And so I just said to everyone, look, if you don't want to get punched in the face, at least learn how to grapple. And I promise, like it will change your
Yeah.
life. I guess, and it's hard to say, is it the chicken or the egg? I think having just been around those types of sports for so long, I just never really felt the need. And it's almost like therapy to me. I know
Uh-huh.
people do things through dance and different things, but I mean, just scrapping with someone in a ring or on the mats, I just walk away and I just feel so liberated.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Well, with the chemical thing, if you don't feel called to it, don't do it. Long story short, like if like don't go into that with resistance and go, oh, like whether that is a psychedelic or anything like that. Don't do that. If you're not called to it, like don't create a calling, you know. Um,
yeah,
in relation to the fighting as therapy, it absolutely can be, like without a doubt. I think it makes you so present, and I think that's what's so alluring about fighting, is it's just you and your opponent, and there's nowhere else to be, and you can spend 60 to 90 minutes just trying to like figure each other out. I like chess. I don't know if you play chess. I'm not very good at chess, but I love playing it. And it's the same sort of thing just with the mind. It's like psychological sparring and trying to outthink your opponent, trying to upset your opponent, trying to trigger your opponent, setting a trap, all those things. But I think when it comes to performance, specifically mental performance, there is 100% value in speaking aloud what is a psychological area of resistance. And the David Goggins approach is all resistance is good. I like to work a bit like a sniper or a surgeon, which is, well, is that resistance a smart level of resistance for us to push through? Or are we just wasting energy trying to burn through something that we don't need to burn? Is there a smarter way for us to approach business or family life or personal life or whatever that is? I like listening. You'll like this metaphor. I've never used this one before, but I can speak it with you because you understand fighting, right? So when you're looking at a fighter and you stood by the ring and you're watching them do their shadow and you're doing some fault analysis, it might just be that lead hand is just 3 or 4 centimeters below the eye. And their opponent they've got coming up is going to throw a long left hook over the top, and it's just going to crack them on the top of the skull. They just need to move it up a little bit. They don't need to change everything. They just need to adjust that. My equivalent of that in my work is listening to limiting beliefs or emotions or bringing out emotions that haven't been expressed and going, I think you're dropping your lead hand here. You tell me. And asking a few guiding questions and then just making those subtle changes to go, you don't need to do that. Or when a boxer's doing too much work and they're bouncing on their toes and they're wasting all their energy. It's like just that approach you have with business. It's not the smartest move. And if you're going to go 12 rounds, then the year is a 12-round fight. Let's not go into rounds, the championship rounds, all blown out. Let's just calm that down and then strike and then calm down. So I think that, and I think that's quite unique about my approach and what I do is I'm taking the same principles from fighting and a boxing coach, and I've worked with some top ones, and applying that in a mental format that enables us to get more performance and more joy and flow out of our clients. So I think just like when you go and watch your tapes, like it's not sparring isn't always doing. Sometimes it's like watching the tapes back, or sometimes it's sitting. Like one of my old coaches used to get us to all stand around the ring and it'd be quite intimidating because you'd be sparring and there's like eight other blokes all stood like all watching the sparring. You'd feel the pressure. And after each round, he'd say, stop, and he'd point at someone. What did you see? Oh, he keeps drifting to his left. That's why he's getting caught with his right hand. What did you see? Actually, he's drifting to his left, but he's actually setting a trap because he knows when he throws the light hand, he's going to catch it and throw it right back. And then he points back at the fighter and he goes, "What was your intention?" No, I was drifting around. I didn't actually know. I got caught out, right? And that's the level of thinking and feeling where you really learn. And that's where I think fighting's a great metaphor. But you can't beat having somebody watching your shadow psychologically and going, I think you're just dropping your lead hand there. Or careful, that pivot's nice, but if you pivot onto a left hook, you're gonna have a tough time. Does that make sense? Does any of that make sense? I feel like you're the only person who might understand it.
Oh, no, no, 100%. And there will be, I think regardless, I mean, I think most people can associate with that in some way, shape, or form, but there will be a lot of combat sport athletes listening to this for sure. Talk to me about physiology. So, what are some of the systems that you use in order to manage your physiology? Because underlying, I suppose, that's kind of when we're talking about emotional resilience, it starts there.
Yeah.
And so, even not, I suppose, not even with yourself, but also with your coaching clients. What are some of the methods that you would bring to the table for those guys?
To be honest, such I'm so focused on the mind.
Okay.
I don't prescribe any fitness or training or nutrition advice. I don't even touch their training. It's all about the way in which they think and feel. Um, Being physically fit, like with a really strong cardiovascular energy, hands down will have a sharper mind, without a doubt. Like try it compared to bodybuilding training, like there's just no shadow of a doubt. If you're physically fit with a good engine, you're going to get a lot more done and you're going to have more energy towards the end of the day. Whereas if you're in a bodybuilding training state and you're bulking, right, it's just not conducive to thinking well. Um, I like to work fasted. So if I've got a big thinking day, I like to fast. I train fasted for that reason in the mornings because I'm a little sharper. I think having too much food, particularly carbohydrates, can kind of slow down your mental focus. What else? Hydration, always yeah. And I think as you know, it's just sleep, man. You get good sleep and really get enough good quality sleep, everything else is better. And then as long as you're eating well, moving well, and hydrated, because here's a metaphor. You probably heard it somewhere. I like to use it a lot. But I like to talk about the car or the driver. So when a client comes to me and says, "I'm just spinning out, man. I'm just spinning out," I'll say, "Is it the car or is it the driver?" My clients understand that intuitively, and they'll tell me the car is the physiology. You know, have you got enough fuel in the tank? Your nutrition. Have you got quality fuel in the tank? Okay. What about your sleep? Is your sleep is that solid? That's like the chassis of the car, right? And what about training? How's that? That's you revving the engine and getting the oil warm. Like, have you been doing that? And okay. So your sleep's been off, your training's been off, your nutrition's been off, and you've not been drinking enough water, and now you're all emotional. Is that really a mindset issue, or you just haven't been looking after your car? Ah. And then I say, sort those things out first, come back to me in 5 days and tell me. And then 5, 10 days go by, and then maybe they come into a one-to-one session. How you doing? Yeah, great, amazing. What were you spinning out 10 days ago? Yeah, no, I just wasn't looking after myself. And I think that that alone, that metaphor, like is it the driver, is it the car? Now the driver, on the other hand, if all of that's all good, he's experiencing doubt or fear, or he's looking around at all the competition and getting nervous and getting upset and oh my God, what about this? What about that? He's doubting himself, he's getting angry, someone's cut him up. Well, that's a driver issue. And that's where I like to spend more of my time getting into the driver's head. Well, what are you burning up emotional energy on? Where are you distracted? Where are you spending your time? You know? So
Mm.
without the physiology, how can you mentally perform at that top level? Now, injury and illness and things are going to strike us down. That comes down to resilience and patience. So then it's like you can see my hand here. I don't know if you can see my tape. So I threw a
Yeah.
lead uppercut 4.5 months ago on a bag, and I got a sharp shot down like down here. Didn't really think anything of it. It's triggered a cyst, so I've got a cyst between the tendons in the hand, and it's taking a long time to rehab. And then I dropped I had a quite serious intervention on it. And then I dropped a weight on my right foot, so left hand's gone, right foot's gone. Couldn't do any training. ADHD was all over the place. Was nervous, was anxious, couldn't sit down, and it was like, okay, just got to accept the car isn't where it needs to be. So the driver's not where he's going to be where he wants to be. So I have to have patience. What can I do? What can I control? I can control my nutrition. Right, great. I can control my hydration. Okay. I can get as much sleep as I can. Okay. Okay. Uh, Concentration work's not working. All right, let's get my assistant on the call and let me just work with me and Kirsten like sat next to each other. Like she's working, I'm working, and I can concentrate because I know she's there and she's asking me every 10 minutes what you working on, right? And just surrendering and accepting like where you are. So that's my take on the physiology when it comes to mental performance, is these guys hold hands and you gotta handle both. But I usually bring experts in. So if a new client comes on board and they haven't got somebody to look after their physiology, I'll say that needs to be your number one hire. Like your next one, you need to make sure that we've got someone in looking after the car. Because if you're rocking up with a dodgy car, that's only going to impact the way in which you think and feel, you know.
Yeah, car breaks down at some stage. That's amazing. Talk to me about fear of success.
Uh-huh.
What is the underlying thing? This is something that I find, I don't know, maybe I think that this is more common than fear of failure. I don't know about yourself. Maybe you can speak to this, and I'm sure you can speak to this better than I can. I think this is more common than fear of failure. I don't know why. Maybe it is because I coach quite a lot of fitness professionals, and it doesn't seem to be that they are afraid of rejection or failure or anything like that. Often to me, it seems like they're actually afraid to succeed.
Fear of success. I think there's two or three parts. Sometimes that's just masking or that's just masquerading around as fear of failure, right? Because
Mhm.
if you're successful, you've got something to lose. If you're successful, you're seen more. So you're afraid of being judged. You're afraid of getting things wrong. Uh, I think sometimes fear of success is actually masquerading as fear of failure. But let's say it's not that. Sometimes it's a worthiness thing, not feeling worthy of success, not feeling worthy of the next level, not feeling worthy of receiving praise or adulation or financial return on your work. So there's definitely a lot of worthiness or unworthiness that can creep in without a doubt. So you,
Epigenetic.
um, yeah, I mean, humans in the past, we're not very good at raising our head above the parapet, right? Because chances are, if you get it wrong, you're going to be thrown out the tribe, and that's kind of it. But I think you got fear of failure masquerading as fear of success. You got the worthiness part, and the third part is confidence. Can I handle it? Well, if I blow up, I'm gonna have to hire a team, or I'm gonna have to start going on TV, or I'm going to have to start taking out bigger financial risks. I don't know if I can handle that. I'm struggling to handle this level. How can I handle the next level? So that's probably the third piece I would say on that is this the fear and confidence. And externally we can be very confident, but internally it's a different ball game. Because if you're having a lot of fear of success, the ultimate question is, can I handle it? And if you're struggling to handle this level, why would your brain push you to go to the next level when it hasn't quite acclimatized to where it is right now? Because the brain just wants to keep you alive, doesn't care about your hopes, your dreams, doesn't care about any of that. It's everything I've done right now up until this point has kept this person alive. Let's keep doing that. That's it. So that works on a physiological level, doesn't necessarily work on a commercial, psychological, existential level. And that's where you have to override your limbic system and go, no, no, a bear isn't trying to chase me down. I just need to get on stage, a couple more stages, some bigger stages, and that's a bit scary. Guess what? That's okay.
Yeah. What are some of the major roadblocks that you find your clients come up against when it comes to achieving success in life, business, any emotional success, spiritual, whatever it is? What are some of the main roadblocks that you have to, I suppose, help people unpack and get over?
Yeah, you got practical and you got emotional, right? Practically, most people are wasting and leaking energy on things that they don't need to. That might be projects, that might be not delegating things properly, that might be a fear of letting go, whatever it is. It might even be how they're spending their time. I work best at night. So right now it's 7:45 in where I am in the evening right now. This is when I operate best. If you ask me to do this at 10 in the morning, I'm no good. So my mornings are treated like my evenings. And and it's not always possible with children and family, but where you can own that, right? It's okay, well, if I work best in the evenings, I'm better off doing a 2 p.m. till 10 p.m. day than I am trying to do something else where life allows me. Um, when you take calls, when you have meetings, when you do deep work, like that, again, these are like really basic performance tips. But then the emotional roadblockers can be just wasted emotions. So anxiousness and fear just creating these open loops that you don't even realize, you know? Um, I don't know if have you met Neil Shoney? Neil?
Yeah, well, not in person, but I've spoken to Neil just in regards to events.
Yeah, great guy. A lot of time for Neil. Good at what he does, and he's got a heart of gold. He was one of my one-to-one clients, and we were just talking about it on a podcast we shot recently. He Life was great. But when he came to me, he was like, Kieran, like life is great. It wasn't even a coaching engagement. We just got put on a Zoom call together and just started chatting. And he said, yeah, like there's a bit of panic, but like what business owner doesn't experience panic all the time? And I said, what do you mean? And he goes, what do you mean? What do you mean? I went, is experiencing this much panic daily normal? And he goes, is it not? And then that was the penny dropping moment because he was at that point, he was the happiest he'd ever been. Business was the most successful it'd ever been. And I just said, well, tell me more about this panic. He goes, well, I guess I'm kind of nervous to open my inbox. I'm kind of nervous to check, the group. I'm nervous to check all these various different things. And I'm sharing this publicly because we've spoken about it on our podcast. I'm not breaking any client confidentiality here. But he didn't realize that he had all this panic going on. And it was only when I asked a question through some of his language, because language is the key to everything that's happening inside a human being. I went, oh. So that's an example of someone dropping his left hand, right? And wasting energy that he doesn't necessarily need to waste. So sometimes it is just burning up emotion on feelings that you don't even realize. And it's only when you identify those and you identify the blind spots do you go, ah, that's truly what's going on. So then you shave off an extra 10% of energy being wasted. And then something else comes up. You know what, man? I feel bad or I feel a little bit like guilty about putting my prices up whenever I want to do that. I always feel like it feels wrong to do inherently. Well, tell me more about that. And you just start to explore that, and you might just chip off another 5 to 10%. And with that process continuously, you get to the end of a 12-month coaching engagement. It's like, I feel so much lighter. I'm getting so much more done. So that's a few other roadblocks is worthiness and anxiousness and stress and not even the stuff that you're aware of, just the stuff that's whirring away in the background that you've now perceived to be normal that doesn't have to be there. So
Yeah,
quite
man. We,
abstract, but I hope that gives a good picture of
yeah, the last 2 years, lighter being the key word there, the last 2 years were quite heavy. And I have of late just made some huge decisions in business that were just weighing on me. And nothing practically has changed whatsoever. Like nothing has changed. It's just that I have made peace with the decisions
uh,
and later just being the key word. It's
yeah,
so like there everything is exactly the same as it was prior to wrestling with the decision for 2 years. And once the decision was made in my head, ah, life life is good, but nothing
yeah,
has changed. It's just it's so
yeah.
weird, like how the how the human mind operates. Do you know, now that I think about it, right? We're talking about lighter and heavier. So I remember I was training for the Irish Nationals and I was struggling to make a weight. Now, hands down, I was absolutely walking the Irish Nationals at the weight that I was trying to get down to, and I knew this in my mind. However, it was a real struggle to get to the weight because I'm pretty sure I had beaten it was Irish champion in the Ulsters and walked the County Antrims, and so I was on fire, but I was really struggling to make the weight. And then I can remember I was in the gym one day and I had the sauna suit on, and again, I think my coach just said to me, you're just gonna have to take this on the chin. You're just gonna have to move up a weight." And I think in the back of my mind, I had almost accepted that I wasn't gonna win it at the weight that I had moved up to. However, I
Mm,
kind of just accepted that, right? Because you know, you had guys like I don't know if you'll be familiar, like Roy Sheehan, who
mm,
was like 12 times Irish national champion,
yeah.
and he had already beaten me, and it was just like, come on. And so, but it was something funny that sort of happened. I was exhausted trying to make the weight, and I had a sauna suit on. And as soon as my coach, because we were cracking pads, and he could just feel that my shots weren't crisp or just nothing was happening. He was like, "This is not worth it." And then I was like, "Okay." Now nothing really had changed. The only thing that I'd done was I took the top off, the bottoms were still on, and it was just bare belly. And as soon as we started cracking pads again, my shots were crisp. You know, the pads
Mm,
were like, there was that noise coming off them. And I can remember uh, Patrick Bell, he said, "You're a lot stronger now that you've moved up in weight." And I was like, "Man, nothing has changed since five
yeah.
minutes ago. It's not like I've gone
Yeah.
and hydrated and eaten. I'm still in the same state. It's just that mentally I'm now trying to prepare for a heavier weight, a heavier load."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I know lighter, heavier, but it was the same conceptually. It was exactly the same. You know,
Yeah.
the nothing really practically had changed. I was still physiologically in the same
The
state, but
same. Yeah. Yeah.
psychologically it just changed.
Yeah. 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 So yeses are great. No's are actually good, but it's the maybes that kill you. And sometimes with my clients, I'm not necessarily working as a mentor. I'm working as a thinking partner. So a client will come to me and they'll say, I have this really big decision to make on my business and I just don't know what to do. I said, all right, let's play ball. And we'll go back and forth and we'll do some sparring. I'll play devil's advocate. I will bring in some new ideas. Sometimes I'm not even in their industries, right? So then I'm like, why can't you do it this way? Why not? Tell me why that's a bad idea. And the objective is to get them out of maybe and get them to yes or no. And that example that you're sharing, it sounds like you were still in maybe, both with the business and in the boxing, and then you just clicked into yes or no, and next thing you know, everything else just so like flowed. So humans have this thing of building up tension, and we cling to what is the right decision, what is the right decision, what is the right decision. But true confidence is knowing I could make a shit decision and still survive, so it's cool, you know. And it's taking out that level of thinking and feeling, which is if this goes wrong, I can handle it, no problem. I've got this. So what you're describing there is you coming out of maybe land. I call it maybe land. And when
Mhm.
clients are spinning out, I'm like, it just sounds like you're in maybe land, mate. How do we get to yes land or no land? And just kicks them out, kicks them back into gear. So physiologically, there was no difference, but your intention, your certainty of if I'm moving up, I've got to punch that a little bit harder. So come on in, like same thing. So sometimes the physiology will play tricks on you, and you've got to be able to catch it with your mind and go, all right, let me snap out of maybe and get to yes or no.
I have two insights I'd like here from you, Kieran.
Uh,
Uh, do you ever catch yourself in maybe land? And what are the processes that you use to take yourself out of it? And then the final question that I have is if there was one question that I should have asked you during
uh,
this conversation but didn't, what would it be?
okay. The maybe land thing. Yes, every human gets stuck in maybe land. I just raise my hand to my mentors. I'll just send a mentor a voice note or a message or an email. Hey, I am in maybe land.
Yeah.
Can you help me? And then they always reply, sure. How can I help? And I say, I'm feeling maybe about X. Yes feels like this. No feels like this. I can't get out of it. Is there anything that you can see that I can't see? And then usually they're quite astute. They'll never just go do this. They'll ask me a couple of follow-up questions. Have you considered this? Or what about this? Or what are you truly scared of? And then usually I get the answer as I'm speaking it aloud. That's one way. Another way is, let's say it's I don't know, a last minute decision and I'm stuck in Maybe Land and I'm getting stressed. I'll flip a coin and I'll just pick heads or tails. And then as the coin lands on the table or in my hand, I won't look at it. I'll just have a thought, what side did I want that to land on? And then I pick that. And then that's like a hard and fast, all right, I'm not going to think about it too much, away I go. And if there's no answer and I'm totally 50-50 and I'm indifferent, I go with a coin because I have the confidence that I can handle both situations and it doesn't really matter. So those are the two ways that I do that. It's usually a mentor or a friend, and then I have the coin. Now, what is the question you should have asked that you couldn't?
Before you went, I mean that was profound. Like that was pretty cool. I
Yeah,
gotta throw that out there. Like that's such a really cool, practical way to deal with indecision.
yeah. It's the maybes that kill you, man. It's the maybes
Yeah.
that kill you always. It's the maybes that burn up the most energy, time, attention. A lot of my work and my job really is just to help close loops with my clients and help them close faster. Because the faster we close those loops, the more they go and grow their businesses, the more they go and spend more time with their family, the more they go and achieve with less stress and less time. That's really it. So that's kind of my skill set, really, is going, well, where are all the maybes you've got right now, and how can I close those loops? And I don't need to know anything about your business. I don't need to know anything about your sport. I just need to help you close more maybes and maximize what you're good at. And that's it. Sounds overly simplistic. And yes, there are some very complex tools I have in my arsenal that I use. But the philosophy is pretty much that.
What should I have asked you but during this conversation, but didn't?
I find that really hard because when you ask me that question, I just visualize the stars. All the stars are beautiful. All the stars are beautiful. The whole universe is beautiful, right?
Oh,
Even the dark
let, let me
part is so beautiful.
let me finish it off with this then instead.
Uh-huh.
So, you mentioned the universe. Are we humans having a spiritual experience, or are we spirits having a human experience?
Oh, I'm gonna annoy you with the same answer what I said earlier. It's both. It's both. I really believe duality, like the yin and the yang, chaos and order, I think it's both. I think we've got the human, right? The animal. I'm pulling up on screen now. We've got this little guy. We've got the chimp. We've got the part of us that still feels territorial and gets angry and wants to fight and it's emotional and it just cares about survival and procreation and that's it. And I think us as human beings, we forget that we're still an animal, and we forget that we still have these animalistic parts. Just interview a police officer, and they'll tell you we're all a bunch of chimps still, right? It's just some of us have managed our chimps better and has been socialized better than others. Then you have the soul and the spirit, and you've got this soul inside this animal's body, and the soul wants what the soul wants, and they're all often doing battle. Sometimes they're super aligned and they're all on the same page, and those were moments of bliss and joy, just like when our chimps are sparring and fighting, like the soul and the chimp and the animal are in alignment. But then there's moments where it's not, and there are moments where the body wants something and the soul doesn't want something, and that's often where we get into maybe land, and that's often where we get stuck. You can't always do what the soul wants, and you can't always do what the animal wants because we have to live in a society. We have to coexist. Otherwise, if we were only chimp or only soul, it'd be very hard for us to coexist. It's why the chimps aren't running the planet because their ability to coexist and do that. there's a whole nother rabbit hole which we won't go down because you and I will be here for like 90 minutes, which is, well, are humans animals that, were genetically modified? Are humans, is it a spiritual quest? Was there a god or an energy in the universe that tinkered with us and built us here? You know, I love those conversations. They're like campfire conversations, right? But
Yeah, yeah,
in terms of performance, it is a case of understanding your chimp and your soul and getting them on the same page. And I think coaching businesses are great for that because there's lots of people that love helping people. And coaching is a great vehicle to help people get in control of their animal, but then also feel more aligned with their soul. So yeah, that's what I'd say. That's a
yeah.
great question. Thank you for asking me that. That's the question that's an example of the stars in the sky, which is they're all beautiful.
That's the one I should have asked, my man. Kieran, it's always like extremely profound listening to you. I used to see your stuff all the time on Instagram, but you disappear for like months on end. And I'm like, where is this guy at here? So I'm like, you know what? Let's get this guy on a fucking podcast, and at least then I can absorb some of his wisdom. Not only me, but of course this audience. Speaking of which, where can the listeners connect with you?
Yeah. So I log into Instagram. I go through periods where I log out. I've always got Kirsten in the DMs. So Kirsten will always go in and she'll go, Kieran, can you reply to this message? Or Kieran, can you put a 30-minute sprint of replies and stuff? I purposely try and limit myself on there because I don't think it's good for the brain. But you can message me that, and I'll always get your messages. So at Total Mental Performance. Otherwise, if you heard something in here and you're like, I want to learn more about the mind, or have you got any book recommendations, or this coaching certification that you've got going on, so I can learn to become a mental performance coach. If you've got some specific questions, Instagram is great, or message me, K for kilo, L for Lima, O for Oscar at totalmentalperformance.com. And just reference this podcast so I know which conversation you listened to and I can point you in the right direction. But I always pick up email. So if you email me privately, I will get that message and I'll come back to you where I can.
Kieran, you're absolutely amazing, my man. And just for the listeners, if you have listened this far and you've gotten value from it, then you got to return, you got to reciprocate. So make sure to share this with a friend who you know would also get value from the conversation we just had.
Please do.
Amazing, Kieran. Thank you so much, my man.
Thank you, Michael. Big love.